stretching out from where we started with the New Labor Movement podcast, we're now moving on to YouTube. There's been a lot of people, we go back and forth on Facebook all the time, and people have very active Twitter fingers. They want to talk a lot on Twitter and Facebook, but when it comes time to actually doing something, they don't get anything done.
I agree. You have a lot of guys who they seem to be, they're Twitter tough. They got Twitter muscles. But when you ask them to get on the street and pick at somebody, make a phone call, stop by someone's office, doesn't really, the turnout is never what it seems it's supposed to be.
I'm tired of hearing people on Facebook and Twitter talking about solidarity this and solidarity that. And then when you ask them to come out to a meeting or actually send a letter to their congressman, you get crickets. But they love talking about stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, especially the union. They love it. You always find the guys who are kind of pro-union and want to work with the local. They're the guys who are at the meetings in the street. The guys who you see on Twitter and Facebook are like, "Oh, the union's this and I hate the union that." They're the guy. You never see that guy because you ask the guys like, "What does your union do for you?" And 9 out of 10 guys look you in the face and like, "I don't know. I pay my dues."
Tell somebody the 3 different branches of government. You go through and you ask a couple of people that. How many people out of 10 you think will actually be able to give the correct answer?
I want to guess, but I'm sure I'd be upset.
Or we're union members. We should have the highest education as far as this goes. Don't know exactly what's going on. Partly our fault. A lot of it is the union's fault because they failed to kind of give us what we need, the tools we need to be able to find out what these politicians are doing, where we need to be active, and what's going on as far as our progression in the labor movement.
It seems like, all the unions have the same problem. 10% of the guys are doing 90% of the work.
All the time. And then the other 90% that's not doing the work is usually the 90 that's complaining.
100%. 100%.
People are usually on Twitter and Facebook trying to read a couple of clips that they seen on YouTube or articles and act like they know what they're talking about, but they really don't.
Yeah, they kind of get like 2 sentences, or a lot of people, you'd be surprised how many people just read the title of the article.
Exactly.
And then and they argue. Then when you go like the third paragraph, it actually says the whole title is not what they were talking about. And then you're like, "Did you even go down this far?" And they're like, "No, I did not."
Snowflake. So what we plan on do going forward is to try to dumb it down. We're going to dumb this down as much as possible because honestly, there's a lot of the process that happens as far as legislation that we don't even understand. So we'll go through and we'll be the dummies for you. We'll let you know that we don't understand and explain it and break it down in the most simple terms possible so everybody can get a good handle on it. Because as far as I'm concerned, the union should be the one that's the face forward that has the most information about what's going on and be able to bring the rest of the working force with us. We should be able to be their front person. They come to us for help.
Well, you know what? I want to give the union a little slack because the union is the members. I mean, yes, leadership should lead, but you can't make guys who don't want to learn something or aren't interested in something do it. And maybe what we can do is we can take it from, because sometimes you go to a meeting, it's after work, and you've been working in the heat all day, and you sit there, and all of a sudden, this guy's going on about, proposal this and vote on that, and the guy's tuned out, he's thinking about getting on the train. Whereas, if we do something like this, guy could be doing this at his leisure.
Well, you could get on Slack. I won't. I still feel the union should be responsible for at least putting it out there. If you put the information out there in a way that they're supposed to absorb it, then it's up to them if they don't. But in order to be on this show, you're going to have to be a rank and file union member. If you're a business rep or anything above that and you want to have any input, this is not the show for you.
No.
But you can ask one of your rank and file members if you can come on and join us because then you'll be able to interview. But this is going to be buying for the members.
It's funny. I have a sticker on my car. It says IBW Local 3.
Right.
And I was in a gas station in Jersey, not too far down south, maybe 50, 60 miles from the city, heading towards the shore. I'm in the gas station, guy's pumping. I'm out there, I'm coming back from getting chips and stuff for my kids, and the guy goes, car across from me goes like this, he goes, what are you, an electrician? I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? He goes, points to the car, he sees the sign, and I go, oh. I go, what do you do? And he points to his, he has IBEW. I forget the local, so I apologize to the guy. And all of a sudden, it was just kind of like, yeah, good to see you. And then I went over, and we shook each other's hand, and went about our day. But it was like, you're right, it was like that, for that quick moment, we were both like...
Both union brothers.
Both union brothers. And it didn't matter.
Right. And that's the kind of thing that it crosses lines where that brings people more together than anything else. And I think that's why the union is going to have to be the front line. If you have an engineer that works here and an engineer that works in California, they have no type of connection. But if you have a union guy here and a union guy in California, once they see anybody, they're both union. And that's why kind of the union has to be the basis to try to bring the entire working class forward.
I agree, and you know what it is? I think the union can cover a couple of different stripes of guys, because you know there are guys who are pro this and pro that and voted for this guy and voted for that guy. But I think if we all vote together on specific topics, we can get a lot accomplished. Because you know, there's a lot of guys who are union guys who voted in a way that may be unpopular with other people.
Right.
And vice versa. And they're hoping for that. Management sees who votes where and how, why, and when. And they have to realize that, yes, I'm going to be this guy and you're going to be that guy. But first, I'm going to be a union guy. And if they know that when it comes down to this, that, or the other thing, if it comes down to a vote about a union contract or a law that affects union wages or a law that affects the union or the working class directly, we're all going to vote together. Because it doesn't matter to me who you voted for president or governor or mayor. At the end of the day, we all want to pay our bills.
That's
and
right.
there is a certain bottom baseline where we all have to get in the same shit.
Based basically on all local topics and local politics. Because one thing, sometimes we can't disagree on the national stuff, but what we all can agree on is the most important thing is our paycheck and making sure we get paid and pushing the working class forward.
Right.
So we're going to be doing basic politics, and we're going to go over the structure of government, city council, congressmen, senators, governor.
Local boards, things of that nature.
Correct.
Because you have to know, and all politics starts local. I mean, us guys here arguing about who the next president's going to be really has nothing to do with our next contract.
Right.
Who is our next councilman? Who's our next mayor? Who's our next borough president? Who's our next, who's the AG of New York? That's way more important. That's things that I think everyone can agree on.
Yeah, we start to split apart when it gets to the big stuff, but when it comes on the local stuff, we're all on the same page. So let's stick on the local stuff, get that as strong as possible, and then let the rest fall into place.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that. What was it? Is just a wait.
I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Yes.
Honestly, that's one of the best things I remember of how a bill actually becomes a bill. But the different parts of governments, like
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock, yeah. Of the city council people, what they're responsible for, the congressmen, what they're responsible for, how these people actually get elected. We
have to know all the committees.
Correct.
Because some committees vote on this, other committees forward that, and if you can't even get anything into a committee to get out of a committee to get to a general vote, then it's dead in the water.
Now they had us fighting against each other so much and disagreeing with each other that we're not reusing our real power. People start to say that, why go do anything because your vote doesn't count, when we have the most power within this city. And how are we going to exercise it? It really doesn't matter once you get to the general election, kind of especially in the city we're in New York. It's usually going to happen one way. But now the question is, before it gets to that point and you're talking about primaries, that's when we're going to start to be a monster, during primary votes. So the unions usually have to kind of cater to one politician or another, and sometimes contribute to their campaigns because they want that candidate to back them if they're in office. Our goal is to try to see if we can get everybody on the same page, make sure that we're dealing with everything that has to do in and around work and moving work forward for everyone in the city. If we can do that, we are going to collectively own this city when it comes to primaries. Because we're going to own it, and not that many people come out to primaries. Once we go out and vote, we're going to be actually deciding who's going to be the next elected official for the city. Once we pick somebody for the primary, the next point really doesn't matter. Our goal is going to be now the primaries.
Whether you like her or not, AOC beat an incoming guy. She was a bartender, and now she's a congressman representing New York's 14th district, and she did it by basically going out and
knocking doors
and pounding the pavement. And she beat a guy who was, they believe, in line to be the next Speaker of the House.
Now, if you can take a bartender and take them from a bartender one and to a congressman the next, couldn't you then go that much further and take the bills that they passed and push them on forward?
Listen, you get 4 or 5 council members or 4 or 5 congress people who all vote the same way as you. That could be the difference.
So what you're gonna have to start doing is gonna fear the group that we're gonna put together. We're gonna put enough people together in different places throughout the city where all our collective voices are gonna start to resemble one. So when you could boast and say I have 100,000 Teamsters in New York behind me, those 100,000 Teamsters are gonna actually come out and vote now, even if you get 70% of them to, instead of what we have now. We are going to really own the elections in this city, and we're not going to have to spend any money. Both of us are members on strike against Spectrum for over 2 years now. So
way over 2 years. Too long.
So why did it all happen? Well, basically, Spectrum came in, took over Time Warner Cable from New York City, and decided that they didn't like unions, and they were going to do everything in their power to try to remove us.
They negotiated not in good faith, but actually in horrible faith. We were not asking for a raise. We were not asking for anything but to extend our contract as it was for 3 to 4 years. That's all we were asking for.
At the last point, we actually tried to give it back and take no raise.
Right. I mean, I believed in the contract, 'cause for total, honesty, I think we were looking for, I believe it would have been cost of living. But other than that, we just wanted to keep our benefits just for 3 years. Just, they're a new company. We were trying to let them know we were going to work in good faith. And we couldn't even do that. Something that we'd had for 40 years, they wouldn't even budge, would not budge. And then came lying, saying they were giving us a better deal and people were going to get more raises and all this other nonsense, which if you knew anything about the company, it was complete lie. Nothing they said was true. They've been sued by the city, they've been sued by the state, they have lawsuits against them, they've paid millions and millions and millions in fines. They're an evil company. I mean, I wish that if it wasn't for the way it was set up, I would tell everyone, turn your cable boxes and get your internet from someone else. But unfortunately, the way New York City is set up, that's not really a feasible thing.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
So since then, there's been nothing but dirty tactics. The most apparent right now that they're engaging in is two things. One is a decertification attempt. So what they attempted to do was hire a bunch of people off the street. I call them ringers, for lack of a better word.
I call them scabs.
They brought them in and asked them. I'm pretty sure the interview process went something like this.
Do you hate unions, and would you be willing to vote for decertification?
Wait up, I see you have here your record murder. Okay, forget about that. Do you like unions?
Yeah.
Once they agreed that they didn't like unions, they hired enough workers where they can actually force a vote. So now we have people that they hired off the street, aka ringers, that are deciding to vote whether or not a union that they're not a part of is going to stay in the workplace here in New York City.
Yes, which is one of the things that, as you see as this show progresses, we're going to try and find ways that maybe we can change laws or add to laws or tweak laws. That how can it be a law that someone who's never paid 1 cent in dues, never spent 1 day in the union, can now vote whether or not to vote out that same union?
The thing that got the decertification actually started was one of the people they hired as
Bruce Carberry.
He loves the name. Actually was a supervisor in the company, and they moved from a supervisor position down to a technician just for him to be able to initiate the vote.
Correct.
Now something like that would be considered an unfair labor practice.
Has to be. I mean, that's another. Maybe that's another. As the movement gains traction, it's another thing we'll have to have politicians we want look at. Because how can you have a guy who's getting paid like 95 grand when the average guy in a Tech 3 is making 25 grand or 30 grand a year with a little bit of overtime? And then magically, a month before the certification, he goes from being a supervisor to a Tech 3, same salary, and he's the one who says, I can't take this union any longer. Woe is me. And then uses a union, not a union lawyer, he uses a company lawyer to file the decertification.
That company lawyer wasn't his though, he did it pro bono.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
You must have ESPN though. You know what I was going to say next. The next thing is the agency that allowed that. So anybody looking at it, a blind man can see if you take somebody who's working at a supervisor position and just mysteriously drops down, but keeps salary higher than the position even that supervisor calls for, and then is allowed to decertify a union. You can't see that that's the company basically playing behind the scenes and pushing that. But unfortunately, the National Labor Relations Board didn't see it that way and decided that there was nothing wrong with it and let it go on as normal. So we're going to start getting into those organizations and find out how they built, how they're put together, who's involved in them, where these decisions are coming from. Because one of them is pending right now, where the NLRB is waiting to consider whether or not our strike is an unfair labor practice strike or an economic strike. So even though the economics behind it is we decided that we didn't want to take any money, we just wanted to keep what we already had, this is still pending litigation. And from what we're being told, even though we have multiple unfair labor practice charges against the company, they still are considering making it an economic strike. Now the question I have is this decision coming from here locally, or is it coming from the National Labor Relations Board higher up?
Well, I think every well-educated union member, seeing that politics is now in everything, it's inevitable, should know who is on the board, who's going to be deciding their fate. You know, the National NLRB was founded like in 1935, and I believe it was all good intentions. I said, but now you need to know who picks the people, where were they before, what were their qualifications to get on the board, and how can we sway them? Or if we can't sway the individual member with our argument, maybe you take the argument out of his hand in the sense that you make sure that the laws and the regulations that govern the NLRB actually really favor labor.
Yeah, most of the time, basically, we were taking this stuff for granted and seeing that this stuff was getting done and these organizations were doing the right thing. Now it's time to be a watchman. You're going to have to start to check to make sure these people who are put in place that's supposed to protect, say, the workers and make sure things are being done fairly, that somebody's actually monitoring and watching them and making sure these things are going through and getting done in the right way. That's what we're going to be doing going forward, watching them, the organizations that are put together, the people who monitor them, and the people we put in place to protect us if it's not.
And we should come up with ideas as a group, as a whole, or as individuals, however you want to do it, on ways that we can protect ourselves, that maybe these things don't even have to go to the NLRB. Things like prevailing wage, or mandatory overtime, or shift change, anything. I mean, there's a million things you guys could think of, I'm sure, that are appropriate for your workplace, that if these things were in place, and they were written down in law and in your contract, you wouldn't have to worry, you wouldn't have to go this far.
Now in the Twitter figure universe, they talk about this all the time, about how politicians don't do anything. And one thing I want to say is it's going to become time for us to step up. If they're not doing anything, why are we still putting them back in office over and over?
I agree. You should elect someone, and he doesn't do what his term is. We should find someone else and primary that guy. And primary that guy with the guy who we like, who we know is going to work for us. And then that way, that guy, and listen, there's always an up-and-coming guy, but a lot of these guys, they want to move up. They want to go from city council to state legislature. Let's see if that guy's record, or girls, don't want to go there. And I want to make sure that this person has a record of, well, they voted with them, voted nice, and then we can use that guy, or girl.
It's going to be time for us to take our part in the process too. So when we elect somebody and there's a bill that's supposed to get passed or upheld, and there's a politician that says they're fighting for it, good, we're going to check to see if they're fighting for it or not. And when it's going to get to a point where someone is blocking them, it's going to be either some politician or something that they could throw their hands up and say, hey, listen, I tried, but I couldn't get it done. Well, you know what? Tell us who the person is. Because if there's a person in your way that's blocking you from doing what we as a people say we wanted to do, our next move is going to be to take them out so there's nobody in your place. Once we control the primary elections, we're going to control the process. So it's going to be up to you who we elected in order to start it rolling, and we're going to have your back to make sure that if they're not doing what we put you in place to do, we're going to be able to be the ones to take them out.
And to clarify, when he says take them out, he means democratically.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the outline for the show going forward and what are going to be the different segments. So, well, one thing we want to do is move people from Twitter fingers and kind of put them in different categories. So we're going to have people that are going to be either warriors.
One is soldiers.
And the rest of them are going to be who's your city council person? Who's your congressman? You know who the governor is because you're talking about him probably all the time.
Correct.
Who's the mayor?
Politicians don't necessarily care about you, they care about your vote. And if you come across that you know who they are and what they do and how they do it, and if you know what they're in charge of, and if you're registered to vote, they're looking for you.
Honestly, with me, I do it the stupid way because I couldn't tell you who they are right now myself. But what I do have is have each one of them programmed in the phone, just like I have if I could know my local pizza shop's phone number, I should know the number to my local councilman.
Hello,
And
councilman.
anyone who's ready ready, willing, and able, and ready to rock with that, you're considered a warrior. Now you got your soldiers. Soldiers are people who talk a lot. They are ready to go to the fight as long as you give them the tools to fight with, tell them where to go, and bring them to the field.
Listen,
and everybody serves their purpose.
Listen, sometimes you can't have too. You can't have, everyone can't be a chief. Sometimes you need some Indians. You need someone a guy who's a warrior to tell maybe 20 guys, listen, this bill's not looking good, or this is not looking good, or this guy's something will come up. We need 25, 30 guys, 40 guys, 50 guys at a councilman's office, or we need them at City Hall to protest the vote, or we need them to show this guy's making a public appearance. We need you here.
And the rest of the people who want to complain and huff and puff, but when it's time and you're leaving work and you have to go to a rally or go to
get your
right
train
to a congressman and you have to take the train because you got to make it home in order to watch the baseball game, you guys are going to be sheep. So you can make a lot of noise in the background, but we won't hear you. We just won't
involved. You'd be surprised how little it takes to be involved. In other words, if you do something once a week, once every other week, show up to a meeting every month, you'd be surprised. Not only does that make a difference, because I'll tell you right now, if a councilman comes to, say, a local 3 meeting, and there's 100 guys there, he goes, they don't have that much support. If he shows up, he goes there, and there's 1,000 guys sitting there, 800 guys sitting there. Now it makes a difference. Now he realizes that. Council people look that up right away. They look that up, and if they see how many people in Local 3 or Local 1 or 638, how many of these guys are in the 5 boroughs, and how many of them are registered? And when that number is below a certain number, they think they don't have to pay attention to us because we're not going to affect them. If that number is high, and they see that, wow, Local 3 has 20,000 guys registered, 15,000 live in the city, and they've all voted in the last 3 elections.
Bet you we get what we want.
That's power. They trust me. We won't have to look for them. They'll find us.
So we're gonna come out to people's job sites. Guys are already out there all the time, and you want to talk a lot. So we're gonna do street interviews. Street interviews, and we're gonna ask people different topics of what they feel about what's going on, and some of the policies, legislations come up, different unions, and hopefully, guys are good enough. If we can get a good response from the people, tuning into the show on YouTube or whatever other medium you're listening to it through, if you hear somebody that you actually want to sit down and I really would love to hear that guy and see why he thinks the way he thinks, we'll find out. We'll bring them back on the show and have them on. We want this to be, we're going to drill down and get to the answer of every question. There won't be any kind of political rambling or pivot points. We're going to get to the point where we're going to get these questions answered one way or another.
But either we'll have the guy on the show, or if we get big enough, you guys will write in and we'll find the people we need to find and ask them the questions.
Right. One way or another, we're going to try to get this down to. There is actually only one truth. So let's narrow it down to the truth. Let's say some laws in place that hurt or hold back working people. We're going to look to get those laws either changed or removed. If it's legislation looking to be passed to improve the working, we're going to do the same thing. And we're going to actually now not just wait for somebody to do it. We're going to be following these laws and legislation and have them tracked on a day-to-day basis so we can see where they're going and what they're doing and make sure we stay involved and making sure those things get passed. So if there's a topic, a certain issue that 2 sides have an opposing facts on, only one fact could actually be fact. So we're going to take it to the board, put it there, and we're going to break it down to a point where somebody's going to be right, somebody's going to be wrong, and then you just got to decide if you're still rocking with a wrong point. Why are you
Also,
really
I think it's better for the union if they don't think political party, they think candidate.
person, right?
If candidate A, I don't care if candidate A comes from Mars. If he votes in our interest, that's the guy we gotta support. I don't want. I hate the fact that sometimes, and listen, this is all you know how it goes. People think certain ways, and that's fine. But people think because there's a D or an R or an I in front of someone's name, they have their best interest at heart. You have to stop it. You have to start thinking that I don't care what letter's in front of that guy's name. Or girl's name. I want to make sure that that person's doing what's best for me and the locals.
D, I, or R really doesn't matter when you're talking about local politics because the decisions these people are making affect us immediately. So I don't care what you have in front of your name. Do you support unions?
Right.
That's going to be the basic minimum.
Right.
And I can tell you right now, you have to do it because it's something that you have to do, We're not doing it out of any feeling of favor. We don't owe you anything. You could do this as the basic minimum, or you could not get it at all.
All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a map. So as we go through and we put warriors and soldiers into the field, we're going to have, we cover the entire city, but we can't cover the entire city.
Correct.
So as people are trying to help us, there are going to be warriors who want to get involved in this process and help. Now, if I can put a warrior on every block throughout this city, we will control this entire city, and that's what we're going to look to do. We're going to look for people to get to contribute to the show, and in order to become not just a viewer, but actually become part of the show and contribute. So just as we have union members throughout the entire city, we're going to start to activate those union members and make them part of what our movement is going to be.
Showing up at council meetings, showing up at public hearings, showing up at when these politicians want a grandstand, we're there.
Or if it's simply just telling us what's going on in your block and letting the people on your block know what's going on with us. Some part or some way that we're going to activate, and we'll have eyes and ears out there on every block in the street.
We're going to break down and take different things that people are doing outside of just the 9 to 5 that is giving them economic freedom and a way to create a vast amount of income, give you tips on what they're doing, and try to see if we can start moving our members toward being more and more free of being attached to having to work and depend on just the 9 to 5 in order to get forward. So,
Well, you want the 9 to 5 to be for your benefits, but you want to also make sure that you're making that money work for you.
We'll try to follow some stories. If I can, as we start showing people the economic advances, and we could show somebody making $50,000 a year and start them off day one, and a year from now we could show them how they created an extra $12,000 or $24,000 a year in income. We'll show you how they did it. Personally, I can tell you my personal story. I'm going to be coming up on trying to now, for the first time, look at getting health care. So I'll take you through my story as I'm going to be going through that endeavor and figuring out now how to even work in this world. I've worked having health care from the union my entire life, which is about to run out. So now as I start to go through that process and try to look for it, let's kind of see what the non-union world has to go through when it's time to actually look for health care, which is such a big issue for the entire country, and show you my steps going forward step by step as I go through the process.
all right, so that's what to expect for coming up. We're going to start this off now, and hopefully we can run this through at least until the 2020 elections, because that's the big thing coming up. One of the other things we definitely want to do and be a part of, and we want to be at the forefront of, we believe, like I said, union should be the forefront of all the working force, not just in New York City, throughout. But the census is coming up for 2020. We want to have all of our workers maybe involved in that, so we can try to get as much support as possible. Because regardless to what you feel as your actual belief politically, the census is a count. So when it accounts for how much money and resources are getting dedicated to our area, if there's somebody's here that's not getting counted, we lose out on money we should be having. What we decide to do with those people before and after doesn't really matter, but if they're here, we need to be counted to make sure we get the money and get paid for it. So with the warriors in the street and blanket in the city, I believe we can have a major impact on making sure that, at least for our city, the census get counted strongly and accurately.
I would encourage everyone to check your voting status. Make sure that you actually can vote. 2020 is going to be an important election. No matter what side of the fence you're on, it's going to be important for a lot of different reasons. There's going to be a lot of local, state, and national decisions that need to be made, and you want to be part of that. You don't want to be the guy, did you vote? Nah, not me. My voice doesn't count. No, every voice counts. Like I said, yeah, listen, you may vote one way, and in the state and the national, it may filter one way or the other. But in local politics, your voice will always, always, always be heard.
As we close out the show, we want you to participate. We want the audience to be part of the show. Like I said, as we go on, we're going to have the people that we going out to interview, the people that are coming up and using their Twitter fingers to comment. If you have something sensible or a point of view that you think you can argue out with us, we'll bring you on the show. We'll come and have you on, and we can argue it out, and we'll see what ends up staying on the board or not. But we want everybody to be a part of it, so tune in and you can write in, put your Twitter fingers to use and comment on YouTube. You can click on the link below and try to find out exactly how to get right to the show, comments, and then tune in, let us know what you're thinking.
All right, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you many, many times. And remember, go Union, Union strong.
Let's get this going.